Hi, everyone, and happy holidays. I'm DeMarco Morgan. Thanks a lot for joining us. President Trump is spending this Christmas Eve at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. We heard from him twice Sunday morning. He spoke in a holiday teleconference with military members stationed around the entire world. And on Twitter, he went after FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who will reportedly retire in March. In his third tweet of the weekend on the subject, the president suggested that McCabe had a conflict of interest. McCabe has been a frequent target of Mr. Trump and congressional Republicans. The political organization of a Clinton ally, Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, donated money to his wife when she ran as a Democrat for Virginia's state Senate. She accepted nearly $500,000, and critics have used those contributions to paint McCabe as a Clinton puppet. He was involved in the investigation into her use of a private email server, and as deputy director, he's a key figure in the Russia investigation. McCabe's retirement would take pressure off FBI Director Christopher Wray, who was confirmed in August. And President Trump has reportedly complained to allies that Wray was moving too slowly to replace senior FBI leadership. Now, the White House defended the president's criticisms on Sunday. Here's Deputy Assistant to the President, Mark Short.
Is that helpful for the president to repeatedly attack top officials of the FBI?
Chris, I think the president believes that the American people have a right to know as to what happened with that investigation. As you mentioned in that tweet, and I think people need to remember this, Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, is perhaps the Clintons' closest political friend. He gave $700,000 contribution to McCabe's wife when she was running for office, at the same time that they were launching an investigation into Hillary Clinton. The American people have a right to know that. McCabe has announced that he looks to move forward and move on, and we wish him well.
He's talking about retiring when he gets a full pension in March.
Yes, sir. But I think it's also important to segregate that and separate it from the special counsel, because the White House has cooperated in every single way with that investigation. And after millions and millions of dollars, no collusion has been proven. So the president is saying we need to know that our civil servants are doing the honorable thing, and it's important the American people know what happened in that investigation.
I want to be clear, though, because he has attacked in various tweets not just McCabe, but also James Baker, the general counsel of the FBI, Peter Strzok, the lead investigator, Lisa Page. Is he saying that there are some bad apples at the FBI, or is he saying that there's a fundamental structural problem with political bias?
I think he's very pleased to have Chris Wray now running the FBI. He's very pleased with the changes that are taking place. But at the same time, when we put all of our faith and confidence in the Department of Justice and the FBI, knowing that there should be no bias there, he's making the point that we need to make sure there's no bias. And I think there's serious concerns about whether or not there was or was not during the Hillary Clinton.
So is he telling the FBI director, Chris Wray, is his appointee? Is he telling him to clean house there?
I think that he has full confidence in Chris Wray. Chris.
All right, so in that Sunday interview, Short also talked about the president's position on so-called dreamers. Last September, the president chose to expose them to deportation, started in March, and now he wants Congress to protect them. A bipartisan bill on the issue is expected on the Senate floor in January. Mr. Trump's immigration policy is back in focus this weekend after the New York Times reported on a June Oval Office meeting where the president complained to staff about the number of immigrants arriving in the U.S. since he took office. The Times cites 6 officials who attended or were briefed about the meeting. Mr. Trump grumbled that 15,000 immigrants from Haiti all have AIDS, and of 40,000 Nigerians, Mr. Trump said they would never go back to their huts after experiencing life in the U.S. Now, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said in a statement that General Kelly, General McMaster, Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Nielsen, and all other senior staff actually in the meeting deny these outrageous claims. Molly Hooper is in Washington. She's a CBSN political contributor and congressional reporter for The Hill. Thanks for joining us, and happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays.
All right, first question for you. What audience do you think the president is targeting with these criticisms of the FBI?
I think that he's playing to his base. You know, conservatives who are really upset with what's going on with the investigations out there. Andy McCabe is a controversial figure in all of this. And, you know, when he appeared before House and the Senate Intel committees and then the judiciary, there's an informal judiciary meeting behind closed doors. It's interesting that we haven't heard a lot of leaking from that meeting. And I believe that, according to some of my sources, it's because both the Republicans and Democrats were surprised by what he had to say in terms of the reason he pursued the Clinton the reasons he pursued the Russia investigation in the manner that he did, and perhaps his handling of the Clinton email investigation and the pressure he was under to act in certain ways and pursue certain lines of questioning. So I think that we're going to find out more about that in the upcoming months. However, like I said, it's interesting that we haven't seen more leaks generally after these back and forths behind closed doors with Russian-related officials, Russian investigation-related officials. We will see selective leaking by some Democrats on the Intel Committee, but again, we haven't seen that. And so I think that right now the Republicans on the committee are trying to figure out which way to pursue these new avenues of inquiry with the Justice Department and FBI. And I think that this, perhaps seeing Mr. Trump send out these tweets, may be a reflection of some things that happened this past week.
All right, so Molly, speaking of Russia, what challenges do these criticisms create politically for those involved in the Russia investigation?
Well, you know, the Russia investigation, it's a tough one because you have former FBI Director Mueller, the special counsel, who's trying to pursue his own investigation and getting hammered by conservatives for having absorbed some of the players who were already investigating the Russia, influence on the U.S. elections, who were already doing that prior to the special counsel coming on board. He absorbed those people. It wasn't necessarily that he went out and hired Peter Strzok and the agents who were involved in these, anti-Trump texts back and forth. And then when he found out what had happened, he fired those people. However, that's not playing so well, and so Mueller's investigation is getting hammered, kind of from both sides. And then you have the reality of that there have been indictments handed down, and now that we have General Flynn, who's copped a plea essentially, we'll see how that plays out. But in terms of politically and moving forward into the midterm elections, it's unclear what role that will play because, when I talk to GOP lawmakers and Democrats, I ask, okay, so are people in your districts talking about Russia? No. They're talking about jobs, they're talking about the economy, they're talking about healthcare, immigration, not necessarily Russia. So that's why it's very much an inside the Beltway hullabaloo, so to speak, but outside the Beltway, probably less so.
Yeah, things that affect them personally there.
Exactly.
We've mentioned the New York Times story on immigration. For lawmakers looking to the White House for policy guidance on issues like dreamer protections, what role does this story play?
Wow, this story, and I haven't seen it necessarily confirmed by other news outlets, which is in and of itself kind of, it raises a few questions. That said, this just basically will cause Republicans who've already sent a letter to their own leadership that we need to pass a DACA fix ASAP. About 35 Republicans sent that to their leadership, saying that we need to do it as soon as possible. And there are some serious bipartisan efforts to get together on a DACA fix that may include a little bit of border security, but would also, grant the kids who came here through no fault of their own, some sort of asylum citizenship and set the parameters for what could happen to their parents who came here illegally and, the other issues related to when a person becomes an American citizen. So we could see that fairly soon.
All right, Molly, let's go ahead and talk about the tax reform bill if we can.
Okay.
Catherine Watson reports that the president told friends at Mar-a-Lago this weekend, you all just got a lot richer after he signed that tax bill. What messaging issues does this raise for the White House?
Wow, I mean, that's something that as a reporter who's been watching, who's been covering President Trump, from the lens of Congress and Capitol Hill, that's probably going to cause a few members on Capitol Hill to shake their head. On the other hand, it's unclear whether he said that, you guys are going to get a lot richer. Just kidding. He does things like that. So it's unclear. Sometimes he's trying to play to an audience. And, I was talking to my mother about this recently, how he kind of acts like a comedian sometimes and says things, and then he's like, oh, I didn't really mean that. So I'm not saying that he didn't mean it, but I think that really the way that the tax reform should play out for the midterms in terms of the political impact on people running for re-election is whether, constituents start getting jobs, whether their wages go up, whether those opportunities that the president is promising through lowering the corporate tax rate, whether that in fact does create a situation, and it'd have to be very soon because these midterms are coming up in November. But if more companies are, creating jobs and opening factories and doing all that, then I'm not sure comments like that will matter as much, because really what we've seen and what I've heard from members is that people, again, they care about their own pocketbooks. Will this give me more money to pay for my food? Will it give me more money to pay for my rent, take care of my kids, that kind of thing? And if it doesn't, then we could see something happen at the midterm elections.
Oh, how I would love to get your mom's take on a number of issues, Molly.
So would I. I get it all the time.
Right? All right, Molly Hooper, happy holidays again to you and to your mom as well. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Happy holidays.
All right.